Great. And let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get underway here momentarily. Okay, should be able to see the screen. Let's go ahead and get started. Got someone else joining us. So again, good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Samarco. My colleague Greg Pottiger and I will be providing the training for today. We've scheduled 2 hours, but it's really been running about maybe an hour and a half, maybe a little under. So, you know, I think that we'll be able to yield back some time to you today. And again, we'll cover the really the front end of this system more than anything else today, because of course the task at hand is to show you how to perform your role, which is submitting capital requests. And of course, you know, those have already been provided in the PDF fillable form. But then in terms of logging in to review those and such, you won't see, you know, the full breadth of the system today. So what we'd like to do is cover the process to submit a new capital request. And again, that part of this year's annual cycle is closed. We did go ahead and import manually all of the ones that have been submitted by extracting out the data that was in those forms, and also uploaded all of the documents that have been provided to Gerald. So when you do log on at the end of today's session, you should see your data that you're expecting to see, but that'll be one of the things that we'll ask is for you to do a general QA check over the next week or so, just to make sure everything is copacetic. And then, you know, as a result of the training today, you'll be able to locate your capital request forms and know how to manage data that is not only associated with the capital requests, but also the data that's associated with the institution and buildings that transcends any one particular capital request. And so I'll be walking you through this first in PowerPoint, just to kind of introduce to you some screenshots and a little bit about the system. And then Greg will have 2 short demonstrations that, you know, we apologize, may be a little redundant because you'll have heard it from me on PowerPoint first, and then he'll show you, but I think it reinforces it and you can see the application live, and I think that'll be helpful. So we do apologize for that bit of redundancy. And so the focus after our introduction will be first on the capital request form and the information surrounding it with a short demo. Then we'll move to more of the institution level data and how to manage documents and data at the institution and building level. Greg will provide again a short demo there, and then we'll get into the wrap up in terms of how to request help and some takeaway actions and how to log in. So we should again cover this in about an hour and a half, maybe a little less. So let me just go ahead and jump into the overview and start with the purpose, a little bit about the traditional challenge that comes with selecting capital requests that really is, you know, meant to be a little broader discussion than this particular you know, instance and situation that we're talking about today, but then some of the traditional approaches that we are not using, quite frankly. There are traditional approaches to try to select capital requests that we believe CFRMS is really providing a cutting edge and a leading methodology for how to do this. And we'll introduce that to you just so you have a little bit more background on what CFRMS is, because again, we're really focused on that very, you know, small slice today of, you know, interacting with the portal and getting data submitted. Not so much all of the capability that the department has with the committee members and how they are going to be able to effectively review and evaluate all of the capital requests and make recommendations. So we thought it would be helpful to give you kind of a little bit of the bigger picture before we focus on the task at hand. So I know this is a purpose statement that has been shared before by Gerald in previous training sessions, but also know that there's been some new people that have recently joined the institutions. In fact, saw another one just a little bit earlier this afternoon, another person that's joined. So let's just quickly state that the purpose of CFRMS is to establish a more objective scoring process and enable the NMHED to develop incentives for institutions to program projects consistent with state goals for higher education. So again, you're going to see a portal today. The purpose isn't to provide a portal, but it does in fact make the process much more efficient and using the capabilities of processing the data once it's been submitted is really, again, a big advantage and benefit to the department as a whole. So let me just go ahead and share with you a little bit, again, in broad brushstrokes, what are some of the challenges of selecting capital requests that is really falls on the department and the committee members more than anything. But, again, to give you some appreciation, we consider it to be a complex task because when you're evaluating capital requests, you're not just looking at one single metric like ROI. You're looking at a number of criteria, some of which are qualitative, some of which are quantitative. And one of the most important things in prioritization is looking at the relative importance of the criteria. To do that accurately, right? So oftentimes people just kind of throw weighting factors at things, but we're using a process that is the leading theory for how to do that in a very accurate way to establish the weighting factors of the criteria. And then, of course, we're going to use that to derive an initial prioritization. But in almost all situations involving prioritization, there's always other factors too and that need consideration. And just like it would be your own financial portfolio, you would typically want to look at mix and balance and making sure that any other considerations like constraints and dependencies and things like that are factored in. The system allows the department to do that. So it's not just about the prioritization alone, but then it becomes even more complex when you have a lot of people involved because, this is a team sport, right? At the end of the day, it's a cross-functional evaluation of capital requests. So you have multiple people involved. You have many requests to evaluate, and that's a lot in the way of an undertaking. And just one final aspect of this is that you'd like to enjoy some consensus on those recommendations that go forward, the capital outlay recommendations at the end of the process. And so building consensus and following this process from the time at which a capital request is submitted to its recommended in the recommendation. It is certainly a complex undertaking. Now, traditionally, you may have seen situations where people try to solve complex problems like this with stickies on a wall. Thank God Gerald did not bring us in to help with stickies on a wall, but, kind of having a little fun with this. I mean, if you've been in those situations, you know how conversations can become somewhat circular. People get exhausted, and eventually, it leads to capitulation, at least in our experience, where, it's very hard to do this in a very systematic way, building consensus using an approach like this. Another approach that we won't be using is the BOPSAT. Okay, you may be familiar with a situation where we could say a bunch of people sitting around a table. And if you're familiar with The Office, you'll recognize some of these characters. But here again, without some methodology, without some technology enablement, without very carefully constructed criteria and weighting factors, it can lead to groupthink, where the highest paid person or the loudest voice in the room ends up driving the decision and everybody else somewhat disengages. So, again, you've probably seen this from time to time. We are not doing that. And then lastly, what I call spreadsheet magic, which is where, you try to take a spreadsheet and really, do good work with it, but it's really pushing, beyond the boundaries of what spreadsheets are designed to do in terms of group decision-making and building consensus. And usually what we see is that in order for this situation to work well, one person has to then really grab and take ownership for the spreadsheet, go off and work the magic, and then try to bring it back to the team. And that often is hard to do. The team feels a lot of pressure into accepting the result. Now, I will say this, and I want to be very clear. I know a lot of work has been done over the last few years, and has been a very structured and thoughtful process, which has been using spreadsheets. And I'm not meaning it all. Gerald's been a great sport. I'm not poking any fun at that, because I think it's been done well. In fact, so well, it lends itself towards adoption of this system very readily. But as you know, you've been in situations where spreadsheets, have been used probably and pushed beyond what they're, designed to be used. And so again, we don't have to use these. We're going to be using CFRMS. That's the good news here. All those traditional approaches are by the wayside. And so we're going to walk you through a little bit about, what this is, again, giving you that broader picture before we jump in. So in terms of CFRMS, this was not a ground up development effort. This wasn't, a custom development. This was customizing an existing service that we have that we run on the Amazon cloud called Definitive Pro. And that's a software as a service. So here are four, really big, chunks of capability. The first of which is the portal, which is where the capital funding requests get submitted. The second one is a business case template. Now, the portal, when you submit a form on the portal, it actually becomes the first tab of a 7-tab business case. We are not operationalizing the full use of the business case at this point. There will be a future training session around that, but we will focus today on 2 tabs in the business case. So the first, part, that capital request form is really, what is needed. The business need is what we like to refer to it as. So that's the first tab of the business case. So we'll talk about that. But I really do believe that over time, particularly even for the institutions who may want to, evaluate cost and benefits of capital requests, even before they get submitted to Gerald and the department, you'll have the opportunity to go ahead and use this capability, and then you can determine which of the ones that you've entered into the system you actually want to submit. So, it could be a real help to the universities as a whole, institutions as a whole. Now, where we move here with the prioritization and actually optimization capabilities, this is what I refer to as the techno wizardry. You may have heard the term on the Carvana commercial. I'm borrowing it today. But this is where a lot of the magic happens in terms of, helping to initially automatically prioritize the requests as they come in based upon your inputs and based upon the data. And then from that, though, the committee can convene and they can go through a scoring process and an evaluation of the capital requests and arrive at a set of priorities that represents, from their perspective, the group or what's best for the agency or for the department as a whole. So prioritization is a key component of this. Again, we're not going to be showing you that today. And then there's even capabilities to go beyond prioritization. If you've had any exposure to a thing called an optimizer or programming solvers where they can essentially, you can give it constraints and dependencies and it will crunch all that prioritization data almost instantly within a few seconds and doing things that humans really can't do and looking at every possible combination of capital requests and returning really what is the optimal allocation of resources that maximizes benefit at any given funding level. And so optimizers are very powerful. They're starting to become mainstream. They're used broadly in industry and academia, but just want you to know that these capabilities we're not going through today. Perhaps someday there could be a session where if you have, interest in that, we can talk about that. Maybe that's something Gerald could, think about establishing as an additional training class. But again, our focus today is on the CFRMS. So let me just kind of jump into that. I mentioned it's a 7-tab business case. And so the tabs 1 and 6, which are blue and the other ones in green. The green ones are, again, the ones that will defer to a future training session, but they're there. If you're logged into the system and you're looking at your capital request on the first tab and you want to poke around and look at the other tabs, feel free, again, but we won't have done any of the training associated with that. So I'm not going to go through this in great detail. I just wanted you to know that, again, this is a part of a broader capability. And as we work with Gerald to operationalize its use with respect to this challenge with CFRMS, there'll be additional information to be made available. All right, and then in terms of just one last thing, I want to share is that, again, we're focused on capital request management, but here are 20 use cases that we use the underlying system to help solve. Again, just want you to kind of be aware that these capabilities exist in the CFRMS, but our focus is on capital request management. So it's really just giving you a little bit of a feel that the system that now is being fielded through the department is not a one-trick pony. There's a lot of multi-criteria group decision capabilities that exist to help people solve complex problems. These are the 20 that we run into most often, but we've configured this instance specifically today to solve the capital request prioritization challenge, but it's capable of doing other things as well. All right, so let's a little bit about AHP, because AHP is the underlying methodology. I'm not going to go through this slide in detail, but if you have curiosity around the prioritization methodology that the system uses, there's just a wealth of information on the internet, but also just some highlights here in terms of what AHP is. But it is the world's leading multi-criteria decision-making methodology. So I invite you to take a look at this and perhaps learn a little bit more about it. Again, this is primarily something the committee's using. We've already had sessions. It's not something that you're going to come in contact with necessarily, but it's probably helpful to know that this methodology exists and it's available to help solve multi-criteria decision-making challenges. And usually, we'll structure a problem to be solved in a hierarchy like this, and that's where the hierarchy in AHP comes from, with a goal at the top and some number of criteria. And then optionally, you can decompose criteria into sub-criteria or measures. And then once you have a weighted decision model or a weighted hierarchy, referred to here within the department as a rubric, you've heard the term rubric. Once you have a rubric, then you can evaluate alternatives, in this case, capital requests. And that's done using a rating scale. Again, that's what an AHP hierarchy looks like. With respect to this particular instance, we're talking about capital requests. And so the rubric that has been in use is positioned here with the goal, 3 key criteria. And I'm sure if you've been working with the capital requests, you're familiar with project rationale and need, energy and sustainability, and stewardship. And underneath those are the sub-criteria or the measures. And you'll see that there's actually 13 of those. And these 13, we're going to talk about today a little bit at the end of this. We're not going to go through these one at a time or anything like that. But these 13 ratings are a part of the form. And I know the forms that have been submitted, you did not provide ratings. You weren't asked to provide ratings for your capital request. But one of the actions that we'll talk about at the end of this, and Gerald can elaborate, but we're going to ask that you go ahead and once you've logged in and you've reviewed your forms, is to go ahead and provide your ratings for these 13 measures. And of course, there's the instruction manual that gives you more information on each of these and how to do that. But again, foreshadowing that there'll be an action at the end of this to provide your ratings. Of course, the committee will then, use their judgments and review everything and make their own ratings as well. So that's a little bit about the scoring rubric and how it ties back to AHP. and feeds into a prioritization process. So this is our landing page for CFRMS. And again, Greg will be demoing it after I walk you through some of the screenshots and just kind of get you introduced. Now, we're absolutely convinced that if we had just sent over this as a job aid and said, here's your password, you probably would do just fine logging in, figuring it out. I know everybody does this almost every day with apps and such. But we want to go ahead and share this with you in advance. So there is, a URL at the top. We'll put it in the chat window at the end, and you can go ahead and click on it. We're going to recommend you establish a bookmark. You'll load in your email address. Here, for those with New Mexico history, I'm sure you may recognize that name. I won't give it away. But this is, you put your email address in, you'll click next, and it'll prompt you for a password, which will give you at the end of the session. And you'll click login, and then you'll get a 4-digit PIN sent to your email address that you provided us. Now, once you log in the first time, if you want to put your cell phone number in your account, then those PIN numbers will come to you in the way of a text message. You probably do that with a number of other applications. Otherwise, it'll go to your email address, and each of them work equally well. It's just a question of what your preference is. And that 4-digit PIN is, of course, meant to help secure your account. So even if somebody knew your password, they'd also have to have access to your email account or your cell phone in order to get the PIN number. So it's what we call two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. So again, that 4-digit PIN will come to you, and just go ahead and enter it in. And as you might expect, bingo, you're going to be in the system. The very first screen is just a system notification. Please, peruse that at least the first time, and you'll click enter CFRMS in the middle of the screen. Now you're in the system. How do you submit a capital request? Got good news for you. We're not going to go through this field by field. Again, we're just going to kind of, get you oriented on the form, and then we'll talk a little bit about, how to actually then do something very similar, which is to come in and just review a capital request where you're not actually looking to submit one. So again, the first screen you'll get, though, is going to be a list of portfolios, and there's only one portfolio today, and so it'll be you'll see that it'll be listed there, and it'll have CFRMS 2021 for FY23, because these are forms submitted in 21 for fiscal year 23. At some point in time, there might be multiple portfolios that you may be associated with, maybe not. We just have to wait and see. But if there were, you just want to be careful to select the right portfolio, and you can use our menu system to do that. But the easiest way to go in is just simply click right in the middle of the screen, that capital request link there. And once you do that, it'll take you to the list of capital requests. One thing that I would add, though, and I know that if you've worked with applications, you know that sometimes when they're designed to use either standard vocabulary that is, maybe a little foreign to how you're using the system, but it's standard vocabulary. Other times you'll see systems that use tailored vocabulary based upon how you're using the system. And we're more the latter. So when you look at this, you'll see that, for example, we have very basic terms. These two terms are generic: criteria and alternatives. But once you're inside a portfolio, there may be different terms for in use. In our case, we're using capital requests in terms of in lieu of alternatives. So right now that menu item says, if you were to check this portfolio, come up under the menu and select manage alternatives, it would be the same as coming in here. But until you're in the portfolio, it doesn't know what vocabulary terms to use. So interestingly, once you actually come in, if you were to go back to that same menu item, now it would say manage capital requests. So it's just kind of a nuance of how systems work. You have to actually know where you are in the system before they can invoke these new terms that are unique to this particular portfolio. again, we're using the term capital requests. Those are the things that are being evaluated. And we are using the term criteria throughout. So we're in the list. Now you're inside the one and only portfolio, and you'll see that there are some capital requests that will be there associated with any institutions that you're affiliated with. If you happen to be affiliated with more than one, you'll see a longer list. But if not, you'll see those for the one institution that you're affiliated with. And we, have done our best to get everybody configured and their accounts set up so that you'll see everything that you should when you log in. Again, if by chance something's amiss, let us know, and we'll help straighten that out before the end of the day today. So here in this case, the example we're using is the University of New Mexico. And you're now looking at, again, a list of capital requests. If you'd like to submit a new one, there's a button right here that says submit a new capital request. So that's pretty straightforward. And as you'll see later, to open one of these up, again, you just click the link here. Or you can click this business case icon we'll talk about in a minute. But go ahead, let's assume that we're going to submit a new capital request. So the first thing that you'll provide is the institution from a drop-down list, number one here. All of those are preloaded, and you'll have to enter a short descriptive title. Again, all of these for this year are already loaded in, so you won't have the luxury or the honor of doing this until next year. But so we won't belabor this. But again, you need those two pieces of information to really get started, and then you'll click the Start Capital Request form, and then you'll see the full form. Now, as you know, that form is pretty extensive. It's pretty long. So we're not going through it field by field, but there are a couple of things we want to highlight today while we're together. So first thing is at the top of the form, you'll see that there's a link to the instruction guide that Gerald developed a couple of years ago and keeps it updated. That is available to you. So it's right there when you need it. You don't have to search for it. Boom. Now, again, keeping in mind you're in one capital request here, so you're submitting a new capital request. If you're adding buildings, this is just something I wanted to make sure that wasn't so subtle that it was lost here. Is that if you're adding buildings to a capital request, just realize you're adding it to the request. You're not adding new buildings to the institution. There is a way that we'll talk about after that you can manage your buildings, you can remove buildings, add new buildings, you can add data and documents, but this is just simply associating this capital request with one or more buildings. We do know that there are some that don't have any association with a particular building, but also there could be one to many, could be multiple buildings. So if you want to know more about how to, manage the building list for an institution, we cover that in part 7 of this. And again, just wanted to highlight that because again, it may not be obvious because you're seeing add a building to list and you're thinking, geez, am I adding it to the institution or am I adding it to the request form? And it's the latter. Now you also see these little help icons. They're helpful along the way if you have questions. And then as I scroll down through here, there are places where you can add documents. So in this particular case, it's looking for a project map. When I scroll further down, there will be other documents that are requested, and those will be uploaded and stored as a part of the capital request form. So no more emailing those to Gerald, and I'm sure he appreciates that. But again, those are available uploads for you. And also, again, additional help, and let's see, moving down through here, additional places to add documents. And then you'll start to notice here that on the left are those 13 measures that use the word score, B1 score, B2 score. Those are the 13 ratings, these selection menus that we're going to be asking that you go back and using the instruction guide, go ahead and give your judgment as to how you think the capital request rates on those particular measures. So those will be all the 13 that end with the word score. And again, just scrolling down through here, it's quite a long form. And one of the things that Greg will show you in a few minutes is a little feature to make sure you don't, when you're working in this form, I imagine you could be in here for a while, and you want to make sure you don't lose your data. And so we'll show you a little feature to help make sure that that doesn't happen. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But when you get to the bottom of the form, it will be all of these that we loaded in on your behalf because we had the PDF forms. They're all in a draft state right now. And that, again, that's a kind of a great feature in the sense that you can put in multiple requests and then determine which ones you ultimately want to submit. But in this case, they're all in draft mode. And so once you've reviewed them, you've done the QA, and you've done your ratings on those that we'll talk about after, you can then just move it to submitted status. And when that happens, Gerald will get an email that you moved it from draft to submitted. And so that's pretty straightforward. Just change the drop down and click save. And so that really does cover, how to submit a new capital request. And I'm going to send these materials out immediately, after our discussion here. Let me just cover real quick because there's nothing new here. I was mentioning if you were going to come back in and just wanted to review the ones that are already submitted, well, it's really a subset of what I just went through. Again, it's logging in. It's for the portfolio that gets displayed. It's just clicking capital requests. Okay, you're seeing the list just like before, but now instead of clicking submit a new capital request, you're actually clicking either the business case icon or you're clicking the business case link. So that's the only difference. It's just a question of whether you're coming in to review or you're coming in to actually submit a new one. All right, it's pretty straightforward. And again, once you do that, you're going to be in the form. And in this case, this one's already been entered. Of course, this is just a test one. We didn't complete the entire form. And once training's over today, we're going to remove it from the University of New Mexico. We appreciate that nobody's had any issue with us using a training, using University of New Mexico to put a training request in, but it's called Aerospace Studies Building Renovation, just to get one in the system for us. And so again, same thing, just, again, the whole form is there. We're not going to go through that whole form again. And again, the message being at the end of the form, when you're done with your QA, move it to a submitted state and then click save. So again, the reason, now you say, why did we just go through that a second time? The reason is, when you're back up here, if you just wanted to come in and you're using this as a job aid and you want to just come in to do that one particular task, which is update an existing capital request, we just wanted to provide, the point of intersection here with the training materials that you would come right into part 4. You wouldn't have to, come through part 3 to get to part 4. So it's just broken out for convenience. But again, it's somewhat duplicative. So, so now we've gone through actually submitting a capital request as well as how to come back in and just to review an existing one. What we'd like to cover real quick before I turn it over to Greg is just this ability to add additional documents. As we showed you when you're going through the form, there are some places where you're requested to upload a document. But if there are documents that over and above the minimum set that are asked as a part of the form that you want to or need to upload, there's a place to do that. And again, that's going to be the other tab in the business case that I was referring to earlier. So again, you're going to come in just like before, and then you're going to find the capital request that you want to add a document to. So you just find it in the list and either click the link or the icon. And when you come in, you will move to the Documents tab. Again, we started over on the Capital Request tab, the first one. Here, you'll be on the Documents tab. And when you do come in, you will already see some documents that we've uploaded. Again, the ones that were provided to us, including a PDF of the capital request form itself. So those will be in that table on the top. And if you need to delete any of those, you can do that. But in order to add a new one, you would just put in the document type and click upload. and you'll go out to your hard drive, find the document, and click open, and it'll come right in. What is document type? Good question. Glad you asked. No, but the document type, when you're doing the form, we want to help organize these that doesn't just rely on the document name. So earlier, when you were looking at the form, you might have seen, a request to upload a study or to upload it might be, let's see, what were some of the other examples, a master plan, what would be the case. By using the document type, we're essentially categorizing the document. So it's going to be easier for someone to find a document they're looking for without having to unpack a name that might, not necessarily be 100% reflective of the type of document that it is. So you in the case of adding additional documents, you can use that field as you want. But we did categorize all of the existing documents that we've uploaded. Now, these are the documents that are associated with the capital request, and that's this little table here again at the top. Now, there is also a table here at the bottom that are documents associated with the institution or the buildings. And so these are what we call related documents. We bring them here for convenience. There's other ways to get to them, but if you're working on a capital request and you want to access or a document that is, or in this case, maybe Gerald is doing the review and he wants to see some documents that are, not necessarily tied to the request, but are more associated with the building or the institution, they'll be there as well, right at the bottom of each list within each capital request. So it's just provided for convenience. So that's loading documents. And I'm now going to turn over to Greg and he'll give you a brief walkthrough. And again, it'll be a little redundant, but appreciate your patience and let Greg go ahead and walk you through that. Greg?
Okay, let me see, let me share my screen here.
I can see it. We're good.
Okay, great. All right, so we're just going to walk through the items that John hit here. I'll just take a minute. So the first thing is logging in. So we go ahead and put our email in next, and then our password.
Yeah, you're actually using the different login page, but it takes you to the same place.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, we have a unique login page for the department, and that's the one that we're providing everybody. We have multiple login pages, but this is a custom login page.
Sorry about that. Let me share my screen again. All right. Let's start over. So now this is what you will see. So we'll go ahead and log in again. And I'll send a code to my phone. And once that's entered, I'm in. So this is that notice page. We'll go ahead and just click through that to enter into the system itself. So as John said, the easiest way, everybody will have, really one portfolio is all we're working with right now. So to go into that portfolio, just click here on the link to see your capital requests. This user is tied to the University of New Mexico, so I'm seeing those capital requests. So, again, the first thing once you log on, I think to check would be one, that you're seeing the correct capital requests, the ones that are associated with your institution, and also that all of the ones that you submitted are present and accounted for here. So once you're in here, to go ahead and review your capital request, you're just going to hit the business case link here. And that brings you in, just like John showed you in the PowerPoint. The instruction guide here has all the information for the form itself. If you just click on that, it'll open it up for you. And this is all, I know information that Gerald went over with everybody, a couple months ago as you were submitting the, getting your forms put together. But, in case you need it as a reference, it's there. So, what we'd ask is that you, go through here, validate that we pulled everything in correctly from your forms. We, basically had to scrape everything off of those documents. So just check everything, do the QA as you go through. And two things to note here. One is you'll get down here and these are these scores. Right now everybody's is defaulted to not at all for all these B1, B2, and the information about what the scores are asking for and stuff is in that, is in that document. But you go ahead and just do your best, what you think the correct answer or score is for each of these items, so that we have some entering information into the decision system. You probably noticed when I changed some data there, this little pop-up comes up, and this is really just a reminder to make sure that says, hey, something's changed, make sure you save your data. So you don't have to do it every time, after you change every field or anything like that. You just need to do it before you leave the form to make sure everything was saved. So as you go down through, here I'll update something again on this test form. You'll see that comes up. You can either click the save there, or you can click the save here at the bottom. They both do, both going to save your data. Okay.
Or you can leave it, for a while, but again, don't feel rushed that every time you change a field, you have to click save. It's just there as a reminder.
Right. And then this is where you will finally, once you've reviewed everything, and everything's good to go, you can go ahead and you've updated all your scores. You can go ahead and mark this as submitted. Just change the status, then you'll click save, and that will submit the document. And really what that does is like John said, that'll send an email to Gerald, letting him know that the document, that this has been reviewed, and is good to go. And it also will temporarily lock this document. So changes can't be made, to it until there will probably come a point in time later in the summer where Gerald and the committee may have questions about something in the document, and they'll reopen the document for further information that you'll be able to put in, and there'll be a field that'll come up here that'll be added to the form once they have their questions. You'll have access to those questions, and you can provide either updates into the specific fields they're asking you about, or also there'll be another field where you can just provide specific answers to the questions that are asked. So that's really the form itself and all that we're asking you to do there. As John said, the other tabs here for the business case are all available to you. You can go through them and poke around if you'd like, or you can just ignore them. That's fine for right now. Once you get into the documents tab over here, as John said, you've got the documents that are specific to this capital request, and then these kind of reference documents that are really tied to the university or the building itself. To upload a document, you will just provide a document type. Let's say this is a plan. You click upload. You'll pull a plan off your hard drive, and it'll upload the document there. So pretty straightforward things that I'm sure you've done in other systems as well. The other thing before we turn it back over to John is when you first come in and log in, we're going to give everybody a generic password. When you log in, we recommend that you change that at some point to something that you'll remember. And the place to do that here is manage account. So you come in under your name here, manage account, This is where you can make sure your phone number, your cell phone is correct. If you want to get, the code via cell phone instead of email, and you can update your password, just click update and you're good to go. Then you can just come back in to manage your portfolios or log out of the system as you want. So at that point, let's just pause for a second. If anybody has any questions while I'm in the system, we can hit those. Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Greg.
All right, let's stop the share.
Okay, and let's see, you should be able to see my screen. And so this is really, we've just covered the real bulk of this, so hang in there a little while longer, because now the main thing that we want to cover is just being able to work with documents and data that is not associated with the capital request, but again, more at the institution or building level. These are not nearly as many slides or as much to cover. So, and again, having just covered the document upload process associated with a capital request, this is very similar. The trick here is if you want to manage what we call institution data or even institution documents for that matter, you'll come up to the manage system menu. It's the main menu item. And again, you'll select manage institution data, number one there on the screen. And once you do that, you'll be able to select either documents or if you click the university, there'll be data associated with the university in this case. Now, one of the things that it's important to point out is that there's a drop-down menu here at the top. And in this case, again, we're managing institution data, not building data. And that's, again, determined by this drop-down menu right there at the top. So again, once you've got that set, you're either going to be working with documents or you're going to be working with data. And it's simply clicking one link or the other. Now, if you're clicking documents and you saw that there were 8 documents there associated with the institution, this screen will look similar to the one we just went through, where again, you'll have to put a document type in if you're uploading a new document, and you'll go out there and upload from your hard drive. But the one thing that I want to call out that's a little different here is step number 1, where if you're going to upload a document to the university itself, to the institution, you would have a choice of whether it's a document that's more generic, that isn't one of these annual documents. And if so, you will just leave that. If it's a generic, for general data, you will leave the selection menu as it is. But if you want to upload a document associated with 2022 or 2021, if you use that selection menu, you can select the year, and then when you upload the document, it'll be categorized by year. So that's helpful, because there are documents we know that you'll have to and want to upload on an annual basis, and so those will all be categorized properly. Again, very easily to delete a document and or to even access a document just by if you want to download it, just click the document link itself, the document name. So this is really just how you work with documents here at the institution level. And then in terms of working on the data side of it, because this was the document side, but if you want to work on the data side, you, rather than clicking documents, you would click the university, in this case, the university name, and we'll do that. And again, Greg will show you afterwards, I'm not going through the building side of this, but if you just change that drop down to building, then you could be looking at building documents or building data. But again, we're looking at institution data here. So I'm going to essentially follow where number 3 is, and we're going to click the university. And now you'll be presented with a screen, and very similar to the documents, that if you have data that is generic or general data that is not associated with a specific year, for example, the BRR gross square footage per par since 2006, it'll be right there on the screen. But if you want to access a particular year, and you can see all the data at the lower table here is actually by year, you would just go ahead and select the year that you want to edit. And you'll do that, and you should just jump right in, and it'll open up the form. So those columns now are presented as fields where you can edit them, you can enter data, you can, pretty much manage the data however you see fit. And then you just click save, and it'll go back into the table. So it's just using the drop down up here to determine what year you want to work with, or if it's general, you leave it on the selection that says general data. So again, pretty straightforward. Now, again, this is data associated with the institution. You can also work with data associated with buildings as well. Let me go ahead and turn it back over to Greg for a quick demo. Greg?
Okay, let me share my screen again. Okay, can you see that again, John?
We can. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. All right, so here we're still in that same screen with our capital requests. So we'll just come over here. We go to manage institution data. As John said, the first level will be the institutions. This user is only associated with one. If you happen to have multiple institutions, you'll see more than one linked here. The documents. Again, very similar to what we're doing on the other screens. Just put in your document type and hit upload. We don't have to go through that again to do that. And then on the data side, we wanted to make sure we limited the amount of data we were asking for. So it's really just the minimum stuff that that Gerald and the committee needs for right now. So you'll see certain data requested if it's just on general data. And then if we go to annual data, there's different fields here that are asked for, and to update if one of these numbers is wrong, to update and just go ahead and enter the correct number and click save. So pretty easy to with how to do that. The building data, you just click on select that you want to look at the building list. So here again. We've imported the data that we had, so you should have your list of buildings in here. We ask that you review that list to make sure that it's correct for your institution. But the same process works. To click to do documents, you'll click on documents, and that'll bring up there's none associated with these buildings yet. But if you want to put in a document for that building, you can. If it pertains to a certain year, you can do that. You can tag it with the year as well. You'll see on the data side, the data set for a building is is slightly different than what we're asking for in a for the institution at both the general level and then at the year level. We're asking for year over year space information. If if space has changed from the previous year, we ask that you provide a reason so that's documented for the committee as to to why that occurred in the when you're filling this out. One last thing with the buildings, if there is a building here that didn't belong to your institution, there is a way to remove the building. Basically, you can, once you've clicked on it here, you come down, there's a remove building link. If you click on that, it'll ask you to give a reason why you're removing it, and then it will remove it from your from your list. And likewise, if there's a building that we've missed importing into the system, you can go ahead and click on add building, fill out the information, the reason for addition, and click save to add the building to the to your list. I mean, the idea here is that once this data is in here and up to date, it should just be an annual quick update to just get your your current year's data in there. Any documents that have to be updated can be uploaded in this way Gerald and the committee, you know, has access to all this information right through the system without having to, you know, email or transfer other documents and information through spreadsheets and things like that. So one last item just to bring your attention to is if you have any questions or anything comes up, something doesn't work the way you think it, you know, should be working or whatever, just come down here and click on this this help icon, and then you're prompted. You can just contact us. Just provide your name, your email, and just a brief description of what's going on. And you know, we ask that you do this rather than just sending, you know, emails. We'll obviously respond to emails, but this way it gets us in, gets the item in our ticketing system so that we can make sure it's followed up on, and we have that knowledge for, you know, for anybody else that has a similar question, you know, going forward. So that's just where the help is there. So again, I'll pause here. If there's any questions while I'm in the system, we can go through them. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. I'll throw it back to John. And
hey, Greg, yeah, just, you know, lessons learned from our discussion yesterday. I just want to pass along two things. One is, as you can see that there's other columns here, county, year bill, and leased. And if you're using systems today that have all this data in them already, you know, the last thing we'd like to see is you have to kind of go through the exercise of putting everything in manually. So if you can, you know, if you want to, you can create an export file, perhaps in Excel, and coordinate with us. We'd be happy to import that data for you to save you some time and effort on data entry. So just want to highlight that. And then secondly, Greg, if you could just open up one window there. We had a question yesterday. I mean, it is somewhat hard to see if you open up a window here in terms of how to close that window. You actually have to have quite a fine eye to see that little X right there. I'm not sure why, you know, it's not white per se, but nonetheless, just want you to know it's there in case you're having difficulty finding it to close a window. Okay, any questions before we go to the wrap-up part of the material today? Okay, thank you, Greg. Appreciate that. And so we are in the home stretch, everyone. We're going to move into just, again, I'm not going to go through this. This was here as a part of the materials in terms of the job aid, but Greg just walked you through how to request help. So, you know, take advantage of that if you need it, and we'll be as responsive as we can. Now, these are the actions that we've been kind of, you know, prefacing the entire time we've spent together here this afternoon. So we have a goal of getting the review of the capital request completed by close of business Monday, the 12th. And so again, performing a general QA check of your forms and data, selecting a rating for each of the 13 scoring fields. And again, for each form, changing their capital request date to submitted when you're comfortable that everything is the way that you know it should be, and it's ready to move to a formally submitted state. And then also, again, more, you know, for an ongoing, but again, at any time, if you see institution or building data that needs to be updated, then it would be a good time to do it. Of course, you know, always sooner is better, but that's going to be more of an ongoing task just as a part of keeping the system you know, to accurately reflect your data. So those are the actions. If you have any questions, I'm sure Gerald would be happy to take them. What we'd like to do is just, again, we're going to give everybody an opportunity to log in, and we'll have the screen up, but we'll put in the chat window let me just go ahead and come out of slideshow mode. We'll go ahead and put that in the chat window, and we're asking that you go ahead and just exercise the system a bit to make sure that everything is ready to go there. And let's see, also, we have about, I think it's about 75 users right now. And when we got your initial spreadsheets in, there were about 50 or 55 user accounts requested. And we did bounce that list off of the everyone who's planned on attending training, and so we went back and added about 20 or so just to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to log in at least once and get a feel for the system. But in terms of, again, whether that right number going forward is 75 total, or, you know, in some cases, you know, there may be some accounts that may not be actually required. And we created them again for our purposes. That's something that we can work through, and when Gerald can work with you to make sure that, you know, you have the account structure set up the way that you need to for your institution. So again, so right now we may have more in there than you actually requested. And let me just show you, this is, I know, quite an eye chart, but these are the ones that we have loaded in. Again, it's currently about 75. And so what you'll do is, you know, if there's any issues logging in, please make sure we got your email address correctly, because that's your username. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pause our recording so I can share with you a password, just so that it's not a part of the overall video that may be stored online.